Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your space for black news, black views, and as always, black opinions. Today is Friday, March 4th. I'm Seth Lemon.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, Russian troops have seized Europe's largest nuclear plant, raising an alarm across the world as the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine continues to worsen. Meanwhile, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, it says it will investigate prosecutorial misconduct that delayed the arrests of Ahmaud Arbery's murderers. Then, a school superintendent accused of strip searching students, what lawmakers are now doing to ban the practice.
Plus, several new discoveries connected to the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre are prompting researchers to call for more to be done and look at what they found. And after 2 years in the metaverse, Essence Fest returns to the Big Easy in person. The two female headliners and other performers you won't want to miss. We have all that and so much more. It's Friday, Soulmate, so let's get it.
We begin this Friday with the latest from the war in Ukraine. Russian troops occupying Europe's largest nuclear power plant, and world leaders are now warning about catastrophic safety concerns. There was a fire at the nuclear facility earlier this morning. That's now been extinguished, but the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, says Russian troops committed what he considers an act of terror by firing at a nuclear reactor. U.S. intelligence officials say radiation levels at the facility are normal for now, but there are reports that plant employees are working at gunpoint, and there are also fears of a global disaster. Leaders, they want to make sure this plant and other nuclear power plants in Ukraine are protected. Meanwhile, a residential apartment complex was hit. Ukrainian officials say dozens of people were killed, and it's reported an estimated 2,000 Ukrainians have been killed since the start of this invasion just about 9 days ago. This is becoming a global concern because we are talking about nuclear arms now. And Secretary Lloyd Austin, he did an interview with someone earlier this week and said that he doesn't even like to even use the word because of what it brings about, the fear that it leaves on people. And this is just miles away from Chernobyl. I mean, it's reckless to just be firing at a nuclear reactor plant. And it says something about the soldiers and what their methods are.
Absolutely. It definitely says that there's not a lot of strategy here, because if you're firing at something that you're also close to, so much death and destruction can come from this. And so the word that President Zelensky is using is a nuclear disaster. And so not just this is not low level here. This is literally taking it to the next level. And so Zelensky is also asking for world leaders to come in and please help Russia to tell them to stop this. And so one of those world leaders, the White House, they're expected to send Vice President Harris to Poland and try to, I don't know what they don't say what the goal is for, but she's going to head on over. And I don't know if this is going to help or not, but this is next level here. This is more than just a ground war, a nuclear disaster. This is what nobody would really want with this stuff.
Nobody really wants this. And I feel like the fact that Putin is not being successful like he wants to be, this is taking out a frustration. You think about how he's talking about the Russian TV, how he wants them to shut down, right? Voices of America, because if they're telling the truth of what's really happening, how Russia military is having issues and struggling trying to take over certain parts of Ukraine, he doesn't want that information out there. They even have the Russian parliament that's passing a new censorship law where if you do pretty much go and tell the truth about it while living in Russia, you can face up to 15 years. And on top of this, I want to applaud Poland for once again opening up their doors, because they understand that this war could carry over to them as well. So there's a lot at stake, and we'll see what happens over the weekend with this.
And we'll see what happens also if VP Harris visits, how that visit goes. Yeah. The White House is asking Congress for an additional $10 billion more in humanitarian, economic, and security aid for Ukraine. Biden administration officials say the request will address the immediate short-term needs the Ukrainian people have as it fends off Russia's invasion of the country. The total package would come to $32 billion for Ukraine. Acting Director of the Office of Management Budget, Shalonda Young, is asking the funding to be authorized as part of an appropriations bill. Congress is expected to approve that bill before the March 11th deadline to fund the government.
The January 6th committee is issuing a subpoena for Donald Trump Jr.'s fiancee. Now, Kimberly Goldfarb worked as a campaign aide for former President Donald Trump. The subpoena was issued after Goldfarb and committee lawyers could not come to an agreement about her talking to the panel. The committee wants to know what the role Goldfarb played in the events that led up to the January 6 attacks on the Capitol. Goldfarb was appearing for a deposition over video conference last month when she abruptly ended the session. Goldfarb was unhappy members of the committee were at the deposition.
Fox News host Tucker Carlson, and I say host because he's not a journalist, but he is calling on President Biden to release Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Brown Jackson's LSAT scores. Supporters of the U.S. Appeals Court judge say Carlson's request is racist. Carlson says LSAT scores would conclusively prove that Jackson is a once-in-a-generation talent. Last week, Carlson complained that Jackson was picked on the basis of her skin color. If confirmed, Jackson would be the first black woman to sit on the U.S. Supreme Court. It's interesting because if we're questioning qualifications, Tucker is not qualified to be a journalist.
Absolutely.
And Fox News has argued that in court that no person, reasonable person, considers his show to be news. Beyond that, though, Mrs. Jackson is highly qualified.
Absolutely.
She went to Harvard Law School, was the editor of the Legal Review. She spent years clerking for Justice Breyer, who is on the bench right now. She also has experience in trial, actually before a judge, unlike some of the other people. So this is a dog whistle that's very loud. It almost reminds me of asking black people to show their papers.
You know, Seth, it's the audacity for me is what I felt after I heard this story. And so Ms. Jackson, well, since we're calling her Ms. Jackson here on the show today, I love that you give her all of her qualifications, but all those qualifications are overqualified. These are seats at the table that we should have been sitting at. So the fact that everybody's kind of just getting on board with black people being able to have a seat at these tables is strange to me because we should have been at this table. And so what would have happened if another black woman, because there were other black women that were up for this same position, it would have been the same exact thing. They would have tried to downplay and diminish any black woman that would have gotten this seat's credibility. And so at the end of the day, it's Trump style to try to pull at straws, and it doesn't matter. She's going to be there. She's going to sit there, and you're going to have to deal with it.
Thank you for the alley-oop. I appreciate that, Demi, because this is a Trump-style move. I feel like Trump doesn't have that opportunity to get up and speak, so he has this people speak for him. Here's the guy that claimed dead people were voting in Georgia, right? So let's just talk about his credentials and what he really brings to the table. Again, this is racism at its highest. I think this is just the Trump party wanting to take a shot at a beautiful black woman getting her opportunity to be where she deserves to be 100%.
And did they ask the same of the most recent nominees? I didn't hear Tucker Carlson asking for Amy Coney Barrett's LSAT scores or Brett Kavanaugh's. And on top of that, the LSAT is the entrance exam to law school. It's like asking a doctor, let me see your MCAT scores before you perform surgery. That's the entrance before you started learning. That's what you had to take to prove. It really has no legal theory on it at all. So Carlson sounds stupid.
You know, and him saying that it's about race, it's about color. Again, we should have been at these tables, so you're the one that has a problem with her, with the color of her skin, not us. We're happy that she's here. It's your problem, not you, Seth.
No,
I'm pointing at
not
you.
me.
You know what I'm talking about. So the U.S. trucker convoy of activists who are against vaccine mandates, they're scheduled to be in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area today. Organizers of the People's Convoy went to social media last week announcing plans to shut down traffic on the Capitol Beltway that surrounds the nation's capital. They want Congress to hold hearings investigating the government's response to the pandemic. The People's Convoy started their trek across the United States from Southern California last week. State police in Maryland and Virginia say it's a fluid situation and they will monitor the convoy.
The adopted parents of two California children who have been missing since 2020 pled not guilty yesterday to murder charges. Kern County prosecutors say Trezell and Jacqueline West killed the 3- and 4-year-old brothers months before they reported Orson and Orion missing. The couple was charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder and 2 felony counts of child abuse. The bodies of the children have not been found, but prosecutors say direct and circumstantial evidence will prove their case. If convicted, the West could face 30 years to life in prison.
West Virginia has a new anti-racism bill, but it's not what you would think it is on its face. The bill basically protects white privilege. The state's Senate bill prevents teaching any race, ethnicity, or biological sex is superior to another. Lawmakers promoting the bill, they say discussions about white privilege are detrimental to students. There's just one problem there. There are no courses in the state that teach racial or sexual superiority. Opponents of the bill say it's just a way to prevent academic discussions of America's history on race in schools. The bill does not mention critical race theory, but opponents say it appears the legislation was intended to be a response to that, to fears that the theory is being taught in West Virginia's schools. It's interesting to see lawmakers focusing on something that doesn't exist yet again. With all the problems that we face currently, why are you solving something that isn't a problem?
Mm-hmm. Something broken, trying to fix something that's not broken, right?
Yeah.
And so the world will be a better place in my eyes if white people, and this is not to be disrespectful, but if white people would acknowledge the fact that you have privilege. White privilege is a thing. It is not something that black people just made up to make you feel bad for yourselves or bad for your lineage or bad for your history. White privilege is a thing, and black people, we are disproportionately affected, and we are sick and tired of you not acknowledging the fact that you have privilege. The day that white people acknowledge that you have privilege, that will make us more understanding of everything. And CRT, like you said, is something that we don't even, why are we even talking about it if it's not taught in K through 12? Why is it even a topic on the table right now?
You know, I agree with you 100%, and I just feel like, when we talk about that, if they don't understand why we say there's white privilege, then allow us to teach history, the good, the bad, the ugly, what happened to our ancestors, what happened to the Native Americans, right? All the things that really went on, how this country was built. In their eyes, they see it differently from what we know, right? So if we allow the truth to come out, then I think they will have a better understanding. Most people, except for people of color, have issues that when they walk out the house. We, people of color, we're feared sometimes if we get pulled over by police. Will we make it home? You know, we're wondering why we're getting called monkey and the N-word when we're at a basketball game just trying to do the sport that we love. We'll talk about that later, but there's so many things that we need to talk about, bring to the table. Then they'll understand what we mean by that.
Yeah. Just the way the bill is described as teaching, I don't think teaching history, like you mentioned, Romeo, accurately is saying that one person is superior than another.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, my curriculum in my classroom wouldn't be affected because we're still going to teach history.
What is anti-racism at that? Racism does exist. There's no such thing as anti-racism because it's still prevalent today. Georgia State investigators, they say they are committed to investigating possible prosecutorial conduct that may have delayed the arrest of 3 white men in the Ahmaud Arbery murder case. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation, it was asked in May 2020 to look into whether a Waycross Georgia District Attorney's actions in the case, it amounted to prosecutorial misconduct. The DA, George Barnwell, it justified the actions of Ahmaud Arbery's killers and refused to indict Greg and Travis McMichael, as well as Roddy Bryan. Meanwhile, former DA Jackie Johnson has been charged with obstruction in the mishandling of the Arbery case.
10 people are injured and others are missing after a massive blast destroyed an apartment building in Silver Spring, Maryland. Fire crews and rescue workers are digging through the wreckage from yesterday's explosion to see if anyone is still alive. An estimated 100 people were displaced by the blast. The cause of the blast is still unknown.
Definitely praying for those families. A Wisconsin school superintendent is in trouble for allegedly strip searching students inside a public school. Kelly Casper, she was charged Monday with 6 counts of false imprisonment for allegedly strip searching students accused of having vaping devices, of all things. The complaint says Casper brought the students to the nursing office bathroom where she, one by one, had them take off their clothes as she searched for those vaping devices. The students told the investigators they were uncomfortable during the search. Casper told authorities that she's got training in doing strip searches and was qualified to conduct them. The teens range in age from 14 to 17. The parents are now schooling the school district, rather. The incident, it happened January 8th, but Casper, she wasn't arrested until this week. This should not be happening. I don't care if you have training as a police officer, as a SWAT officer, as military, whatever. You should not be strip searching students inside of a school. And I know that there are some lawmakers now in the state who feel they might need to draft up some legislation to ban this practice. It's sad that you would even think this needs to be done.
Seth and Romeo, I'm going to just say something. I want to just dive a little bit deeper into what this awful human being did. She made young girls lift up their shirts, expose their bras and their breasts to search for a vape pen. The amount of I can't even imagine a parent finding out that that is what my child went to school. I don't care if it was a vape. I don't care what she was looking for. If I ever were to find out that a teacher, a superintendent made my child expose under her shirt because you were looking for a vape pen, livid.
I know Romeo would be livid too.
She crossed the line so much.
I would be up at the school in a heartbeat. You have to understand this. Look, I know I haven't been out of school that long, but if it gets to something like that and you're unsure, you call the parents. Right? You don't cross that line. This is a line you cannot go back on. And I think with this superintendent, you got to look deep into her life. Maybe check her laptop at home. Maybe see what's going on and other things is going on within her life, right? Because I think there's more to the story that may come out eventually.
Ooh, Romeo. That's a point right there.
Yes.
A Florida mother of an 11-year-old is demanding cops become better trained to handle situations with children. Apopka police officers, they put an 11-year-old child in handcuffs after he was accused of stealing a bike. Cops say they got a call about someone punching another person and stealing the bike. The boy's mother, Melanie Brown, and other family members tried to stop police from arresting the boy, but the cops put the boy in a squad car. Officers say a short time later, they then released him when it was proven he wasn't the thief. Brown says she will fight for justice for her son, and Apopka police officials, they say they are conducting an administrative investigation into the incident. Another incident that went way too far, another situation of mistaken identity here, and when will it stop? I mean, honestly, doing an administrative investigation, is that enough? Honestly, an apology, is that enough? What will be enough for families who have to go through situations like this?
I don't know if there ever will be enough. We saw what happened to George Floyd, how that played out, right? We saw what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. We saw what happened to the fight in the mall where the black team was apprehended, right? What face to the ground while the white kid they was fighting up against was just pretty much sitting down until they decided to go and take care of him as well, right? What about the young black girl that was on the mini bike? They got thrown to the ground, right? Maybe she refused to be arrested. Most people do when they're being apprehended. They're nervous. I get that. But the way she was treated was unnecessary. So, Demi, to answer your question, we don't see any sign of that lighting up at all. And that's scary for all of us in this country.
Florida does have a minimum arrest age, but surprisingly, it's 7 years old. And so to think about any child that young being handcuffed with their little wrists, that is violent. And especially I could see a child resisting, not understanding, not having the wherewithal to know exactly what is going on in that situation.
And been scared at that moment, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So this may be something that Florida lawmakers need to revisit. Maybe 7, even 11 seems a little bit too young to be cuffing. And we already know, all the studies show that black children are always perceived as older by other races. So this is very concerning.
Definitely is. All right, the Minnesota community is grappling with racist incidents at 2 high school sporting events. Students, citizens, and city officials met at a school board meeting this week in New Prague, Minnesota. They were there after members of the visiting school sports teams were subjected to racial slurs from students and parents. The incidents happening during a basketball game and hockey match last month. In one incident, a New Prague hockey player reportedly called a player on the St. Louis Park team a monkey. Parents and students are demanding change in a predominantly white community. School officials say they will take action against discrimination at its sporting events.
A 30-year-old man has pleaded guilty to the murder of philanthropist Jacqueline Avant, the wife of legendary music executive Clarence Avant. Now, this news is coming in this week. Ariel Maynard, who appeared in court in a wheelchair and wearing a suicide prevention vest, is accused of this. He pled guilty to 1 count each of murder, attempted murder, being a felon in possession of a firearm, as well as 2 counts of residential burglary with a person present. He also admitted to shooting at a security guard who was not wounded during the robbery. Maynard now faces 170 years in prison to life. He will be sentenced at the end of the month.
A Florida jury is awarding a former city manager $4.4 million after he was wrongfully fired 6 years ago. Daniel Roseman was let go without severance in 2016. Hallandale city officials say Roseman was fired for alleged misuse of city money. Before he was fired, Roseman was making $180,000 a year. He says because he was accused of stealing, no one would hire him, and he was forced to sell his house and move into his daughter's apartment in California. Under normal circumstances, he would have received $92,000 in severance pay had the city fired him without a cause. Jurors believed his firing and denial of severance was in retaliation.
The LAPD must stop using minor violations as a reason to pull over drivers for more serious crimes unless they have information that justifies the stop. The new policy was adopted this week by the Los Angeles Police Commission. The new rule says when cops make pretextual stops, they must record themselves with body-worn cameras. Officers who fail to follow the new rules will be required to undergo training and could face more severe discipline.